in Europe and central banks in Europe. Basically, they're trying to track down which other big banks have exposure to Credit Suisse. It's kind of a process that's absolutely normal and expected. In fact, to be perfectly honest, I think it would be bigger news if the Treasury Department and its counterparts were not doing this. With Credit Suisse struggling, its stock and bonds absolutely under assault by investors all day today. You certainly expect that they would be talking to these all the other big banks and asking them what are their exposures in any ways. Because, one of the big lessons they learned from the global financial crisis back in 08, 09, that the big banks were very, very highly interconnected in ways that they did not know, in which the banks didn't even fully understand. So clearly, they're trying to work out and make sure no other big banks would be threatened if Credit Suisse actually went to the wall, which, by the way, it's not close to doing that quite yet by any indication.
It makes it a little easier that the Swiss National Bank has provided this liquidity backstop, but it's important to understand, what does that exactly entail? As you've been looking at this story, how far does that go?
Well, I don't think the backstop affects in any way what the regulators will go about doing. That certainly has a massive implication for investors. It certainly is intended to calm investors down. But the Treasury or any other finance ministry or the European Central Bank or the Fed are not going to suddenly say, oh, we don't have to look into this anymore. They want to know from all the big banks within their jurisdictions, okay, let's talk about what's on your balance sheet, how much are you exposed, are you holding Credit Suisse bonds, have you written credit default swaps on those bonds to somebody else? Any way in which a deeper, more negative turn by Credit Suisse would affect their own balance sheets.
So the point is also here that this is a bank which has been sort of limbering along. Our previous guest was saying there's been like a car crash in slow motion. So, perhaps other financial institutions have been looking at this very closely. I think we have a story today saying how they've in recent months been cutting their exposure to Credit Suisse already.
Absolutely. That is an excellent story. Jen Serrain, Catherine Doherty, and Hannah Levitt wrote that today. I think this has been going on among the regulators, too, for a lot longer than we knew about. It was no secret that Credit Suisse has been struggling with its turnaround for months. And so the big banks would have been examining and trying to minimize their exposure, trying to lessen their exposure for some time.
But Chris, it's less of an important story and a less interesting story if it's if it's a single bank that has issues. But if this is global contagion, that's what makes it right at the top of everybody's editorial choices. So we want to think about what else is affected like this. Are you looking at basically now this being a global environment for the weakening of big banks, or is this just a one-off story?
Well, you can think about this on two levels. First of all, you can think about real interconnections that would indeed weaken the balance sheets of other financial institutions. But even in the absence of that, the blow to confidence of the demise or this very severe weakening of an institution like Credit Suisse really affects all investors, lenders, consumers, employers across the world, really. Confidence is an absolutely crucial part of the health of financial markets. And of course, we're in a rate hiking cycle. Economies are slowing. All of this makes the situation much more exacerbated. These are the times in which something breaks and turn out.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for being with us. Christopher Condon, Bloomberg U.S. Treasury reporter. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
It's gone 6:30 in the morning right here in Hong Kong, 6:30 in the evening on the Atlantic seaboard of the United States. I'm Rashad Salamat.
And I'm Brian Curtis here in Hong Kong, looking at Asian equity futures lower this morning. Nikkei futures suggest maybe a good 600-700 points down at the open. Details coming up on markets, but for now, some of the top stories.
We've got the former European Central Bank Executive Board member Lorenzo Vinismahi saying he thinks the bank should either delay or pare back this week's planned half-point interest rate hike, telling a German newspaper that contagion from SVB's collapse has already led to monetary tightening. On the other hand, Amundi's Monica Defend telling us that she thinks the ECB should stay the course with its planned increase in borrowing.
We are convinced, though, that the ECB will continue and will hike 50 basis points. If not, it might really imply a sense of fear of financial instability. Inflation is still there, and there are other tools that the ECB might use.
Bloomberg Economics saying it's expecting the ECB to be more cautious than it previously signaled, with a rate of 25 basis points. The ECB will issue a monetary decision Thursday.
A shocking new report shows the true cost to American companies for the tariffs instituted by former President Donald Trump. Bloomberg's Tom Busby with the story.
U.S. importers bore nearly the entire burden of the tariffs former President Trump placed on more than $300 billion worth of Chinese goods from 2018 through 2021. Now, those added tariffs raised the cost that U.S. companies paid and what U.S. consumers paid. That's according to a new report by the independent U.S. government-funded International Trade Commission, which found a nearly 1-to-1 increase in the price of U.S. imports following implementation of those so-called Section 301 levies, which only hurt American businesses, not those in China. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
All right, it's time now to catch up with the latest global news. Chinese billionaire has been arrested in the U.S. Skater Dan Schwartzman has got that story, and the rest of the headlines are being made globally.
That's right, Rish. Exiled Chinese billionaire Guo Wengui has been arrested and charged with fraud and money laundering. The businessman and his financial advisor, Kim Ming Jae, allegedly defrauded thousands of victims for more than $1 billion, which were spent on luxury items such as, a $26 million home in New Jersey, a $37 million yacht, cars worth millions, including a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. Guo was arrested in New York while Jay is still on the loose. A rare chat occurring between U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Russia's Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu. That happened earlier today. Now, both speaking about the Reaper surveillance drone that went down in the Black Sea yesterday after possibly being hit by a Russian fighter jet. Both sides are, of course, looking to avoid escalating the situation. Russia has denied that its Su-27 jet hit the drone and says it crashed due to, quote, sharp maneuvering. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, doesn't know if the contact between the plane and the drone was intentional.
We know that the intercept was intentional. We know that the aggressive behavior was intentional. We also know it was very unprofessional and very unsafe. The actual contact of the fixed-wing Russian fighter with our UAV, the physical contact of those two, not sure yet. That remains to be seen.
Milley was speaking at a press conference earlier today. Now, reports say that both sides are racing to recover the wreckage of that Reaper drone. Vladimir Putin and Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad meeting in Moscow as Russia looks to help restore ties between Syria and Turkey. Moscow is also looking to host a four-way talk with Iran involved as well, with the talks intending to set the tone for future meetings between the top diplomats from all countries involved. Syria is trying to get Turkey to remove troops from the northern part of the country and to stop supporting armed groups within Syria. Israel says that they had shot and killed a man suspected of planting a roadside bomb in the north that seriously wounded a driver. The incident occurring Monday, but Israel didn't want to release the information until they had identified the attacker, although they did not make that public. Israel claims the man entered the country from Lebanon, and due to how the bomb exploded, they've now blamed the attack on Hezbollah. Madagascar says they've recovered 34 bodies from the Indian Ocean after a boat carrying 58 passengers sank on its way to the French territory of Mayotte. The boat had left Saturday night without going through customs control or official immigration, and it sank off the northern coast of Madagascar. Officials are looking for a man and a woman they say are responsible. Global news, 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Dan Schwartzman, and this is Bloomberg.
This is Sam Keane. I'm Jonathan Ferro.
And I'm Lisa Abramowitz.
Join us tomorrow morning for Bloomberg Surveillance.
The ECB meets within a continuing banking crisis. We speak with Jeffrey Yu of BNY Mellon.
And an eye toward the painful decision next week for the Federal Reserve with Neil Zetta of Renaissance Macro.
Bloomberg Surveillance starting at 7 a.m. on Bloomberg 1130, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app.
Or listen on demand on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This commercial's just a minute, but sometimes that's all it takes. I'm Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital, a hospital unlike any other. Calvary provides extra special care to people living with very complex medical needs, with cancer, heart, kidney failure, COPD, and other serious illnesses. Loving, compassionate, expert care in our hospital or in your home relieves their pain and improves quality of life. And not just for the person who's sick. We also care for families and loved ones because we know they need comfort too. If you or someone you love is facing a life-limiting illness, take a minute and talk to us about Calvary Care, our 123-year tradition of compassion, caring, commitment, dignity, and non-abandonment. Call 718-518-2000 for the extra special care you need, or visit calvaryhospital.org. Calvary Hospital, where life continues.
Interactive Brokers clients earn interest of up to 4.08% on the uninvested cash in their brokerage accounts. That's just one of the many reasons clients use Interactive Brokers to trade stocks, options, futures, currencies, bonds, funds, and more. Rates subject to change. Visit ibkr.com/interest rates to learn more. That's ibkr.com/interest rates.
Europe is at the forefront of building a new economy. After a year of war, supply chain bottlenecks, and economic disarray, global leaders must work through the opportunities and challenges facing the continent. On April 19th and 20th, Bloomberg's New Economy will gather leaders of government and business in discussion around the most pressing issues facing the European economy: inflation, regulation, supply chain disruption, energy, and cryptocurrency. Watch the event live from Ireland at BloombergNewEconomy.com. Whether you're an in-house counsel or in private practice, Bloomberg Law gives you the edge with the latest in AI-powered legal analytics, business insights, and workflow tools. With guidance from our experts, you'll grasp the latest trends in the legal industry, helping you achieve better results for the practice of law, the business of law, the future of law. The difference is Bloomberg Law. Learn more at BloombergLaw.com.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest Sound On podcast, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm on the administration's clean energy challenges since President Biden approved the Willow oil drilling project in Alaska.
It's really important that we recognize that we are going through a managed transition. So we have to be, and this is what the president has called upon, we've called upon, we have to be producing right now so that we don't end up seeing these prices jack up as a result of the volatility of the war, for example. And at the same time, we have to be accelerating toward clean. And in this case, really important to be accelerating toward net negative carbon pollution. For example, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is part of what was invested in through that bipartisan infrastructure law last year.
To put a finer point on it, Secretary, does this Willow project make it more challenging or delay the goal of reaching net neutrality by 2050?
Well, I think it is very clear that we have to accelerate these carbon negative technologies as well. And while, we all have to recognize that because of this transition and because of the volatility associated with pulling, whether it's Russian barrels of oil or Russian natural gas off the market, that we still have to allow people to get from place to place affordably and turn on the lights. So this is why the balance is really important, but it's also why we have now invested the greatest amount that the United States ever, in fact, one of the largest investments in the world in these clean technologies. And that's what we're doing at the Department of Energy, is deploy all these clean technologies so that we can have a balanced transition.
Here's a full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Sound On podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
6:40 on Wall Street. I'm Doug Krisner in New York. This is your daily reminder from Innovation Refunds. Your small to medium-sized business could qualify for up to $26,000 per employee if you kept them on the payroll during the pandemic. It's very easy, and you can see if you qualify by going to getrefunds.com. We check markets throughout the day for you here on Bloomberg. We had a wave of panic gripping markets today stateside. A lot of concern about financial stress building at Credit Suisse, and this frantic rush for haven assets benefited a lot of the safe haven corners of the market. That would include U.S. Treasuries. We were up in price, down in yield pretty dramatically across the curve. The 2-year in and of itself was down 33 basis points in the New York session to 388. We've got a 10-year now at 345. So that's where the action's going to begin in Tokyo.